Having a remote team has its pros and cons. On one hand, you will save on labor and you have more people to choose from. But on the other hand, it can be hard and intimidating to manage a team of people that is spread all around the world. So maybe you have a remote team and you are not completely satisfied with their performance. Or maybe you are about to hire your first employee. If that's the case, this video is for you. Hi, my name is Michael. And if you are building a remote team, you probably want them to take their job seriously. You want them to act like owners. You need to be confident in them and their abilities, otherwise you will be stressed more than ever. And remember, having a team is not just about the time you save, it's also about your mental capacity. And if you worry about their performance every day, you will simply not get there. So let's dive in and let me show you how you can manage a remote team. First of all, I would like to clarify the difference between deciding and delegating. Deciding is when we figure out what needs to be done, and we also decide how it is going to be done. We assign the task, we review it, and if they get stuck, they ask us. And we spend a lot of time actually making these decisions, what to assign, when to assign it, and so on. And sometimes we actually decide that it's simply easier to do it ourselves. And then there is delegating, when we empower them to make decisions. We reward ownership of the task or a process, not just the outcome. We also encourage ownership and we transfer the accountability. So that could be the difference between having a general assistant and a supply manager. So when we have an assistant, we simply send them a task, we need to help with the research, we assign a task, we review the results, and that's it. But with supply manager, they are accountable for a specific part of the process. They are accountable for that particular outcome. Let's say maintaining stock at Amazon, right? So we know they are taking care of it without us having to step in. And we obviously want to mainly delegate to free up our time and our mental capacity. And in order to do that, there are 4 points we should clearly define. We need to define our why, we need to define what, we need to define how, and we also need to understand their why. So we have to give them the context, we have to set expectations, we have to provide instructions, and we also have to align incentives. And ideally, we define all of this before we even start hiring. So let's look at each point in detail. Our why is explaining why the task or the process matters and what actually matters the most. Out of all of their responsibilities, what matters the most and why. So when we look at customer service as an example, we can explain why it matters, right? Their main responsibility is to reply to buyer messages, but we need to explain why, right? We are trying to prevent negative reviews. They also help us identify potential product improvements. That way, we can improve our products, we can make better products, we can sell more, and our business can grow, right? And if you explain every single task like that, they will understand why it matters and what matters the most. We can say, okay, we want to reply to all of our buyer messages within 24 hours. Because that way we would minimize the chance that the customer would leave a negative review, because it takes like 7 positive reviews to balance out 1 negative review. So it's very, very important to reply within 24 hours, right? And when you explain it like this, they fully understand why it matters. And for example, with supply, we can say that the most important thing is to stay in stock. If we are not in stock, we are not selling, we are not making money, right? And why it matters even more at Amazon, because we also lose the ranking. If we lose the ranking, we have to pay more for marketing to rank our products again. And when we explain this, once again, they understand the importance of their task. And we can also explain that they are the main point of contact for our suppliers, and maintaining a good relationship with the suppliers is basically the core of the business, right? So I believe that you know all of this, but make sure that your employees know all of this as well. Now, let's take a look at the expectations. We should share a big picture view of their responsibilities, basically an overview of the core routines and tasks. So if we take a look at supply, we can say that one of their responsibilities is to communicate to supplier, negotiate with them, manage POs, manage shipments, communicate to freight forwarders, prepare invoices, arrange payments, and so on. So having an overview like this is extremely helpful, right? And this is where we can explain what matters the most, so they always know how to prioritize. And we can define this in more detail using flowcharts. And if you are not sure how to create flowcharts, I already have a video about this topic, how to systemize your Amazon FBA business. So make sure to click that link to check it out. And in these flowcharts, we also specify the key decision points, so they know exactly where we step in and what is their responsibility. So it really simplifies the process of explaining what they should be doing and ideally when as well, right? Now we are getting into the how. And this really depends on their competence level. If their competence is low, we require detailed procedures. If their competence is higher, we don't have to provide as detailed instructions because they already have the experience and they understand what needs to be done. So you can get away with a simple checklist. But if the competence level is low, you better provide more detailed instructions. You always want to make sure that they know exactly how to do it. We also have a task management software where we keep track of all of these routines and tasks. That is the core of our business. We have checklists, templates, and procedures. And I personally prefer to provide video instructions using Loom. So I simply record myself going through the process so I can then hand it to them and just make sure they understand how. And lastly, we have their why. This is obviously individual, so once we bring someone on board, make sure you understand their why so we can then come up with relevant incentives, right? So we look at our goal and we understand their why, and then we can align the incentives to achieve the same goal. So we provide incentives to perform well in the short term. Good performance is acknowledged and rewarded. That's very important. And then we have specific KPIs where we define what the good performance actually is, right? For, let's say, for our customer service agent, it could be all buyer messages are answered within 24 hours, right? That could be a KPI for our customer service agent. And we can also provide incentives to stay in the long term, to stay with us. So they have to see that there is a growth potential. So once our business grows, their salary increases as well. It does not necessarily mean that as we double the business, we have to double their salary. But if they see that there is growth potential, that our business is going well, and they are rewarded for that, it helps them to understand that they are in the right boat. And we can also provide a share in our exit plan, right? So we can say, once we sell the business, they will receive 6 months of their salary or something like that, right? So they are incentivized to stay for the long term. Make sure to write all of this down and formalize it so you can always refer back to it and they can see it as well. And once we do that, we are ready to transfer the accountability. Now, I also recommend to really try to make it about them. So let me explain. We really should consider their needs and wants and ask them what they want to achieve in our business, right? Because usually we just ask how they can serve our business, but we should also know how our business serves them, right? So we should really try to turn their growth into a game and always work towards something. So I will give you a quick example. It is possible that your brand manager may want to try and learn driving external traffic. He wants to learn Facebook ads. So make sure you implement that into his growth plan, into your projects, and really look at it and consider it when you make your plans, right? Because if you know that he wants to learn it, that is a huge benefit if you allow him to do so and also invest into that project. Obviously, it has to align with your own goals, but once we understand their goals, what they actually want to achieve, what they want to learn, and how they want to grow, we can then figure out how to provide it to them. The next important step is to remind them often. Really check in with them as much as possible and always refer back to the why, what, and how. So one of the reminders could be a weekly check-in. Ideally, it would be a call, 10 to 20 minutes, to really remind them what is important and provide quick feedback. To say that they did something well or that there was room for improvement, for example, right? And then we could have a quarterly performance review where we really provide structured feedback with details, right? Because your job during these performance reviews is to motivate them and train them as well. And really a good method to provide feedback is the sandwich method, right? So we provide some positive feedback, then the negative, and we end with positive as well. So it could look like this. We compliment them, we coach them, and then we encourage them. Plan slowly, hire fast, and fire faster. That was one of our hiring principles, and I will now explain this in detail. So if something goes wrong, always make sure to investigate. Assume that you did something wrong first. We always want to protect their ego where we provide feedback. So we really should think twice before we say something negative and always use the sandwich method. When we started hiring, I was concerned that we will invest hours and hours in finding and training and they won't be a good fit or they decide to leave, right? So I would waste all of this time and all of this effort because they just decide to leave. And that is why the system is our biggest investment. That's why we define the what and the how first. That is our system. And that is where we spend the most time. That is the part where we plan slowly. And if we have all of that defined, it is quite easy to replace them if needed. And in that case, we should really avoid the sunk cost fallacy because we want to make sure that we don't waste time with someone who is just not the right fit. Because it is simply possible that their competence level is just too low and they are not up to the task. Or they are simply not a good fit for our business. I highly recommend the shots on goal approach where you simply do your best to increase your chances to succeed, and if you miss, you just take another shot. It's very similar to product development. You do your best, you will launch your product, and if it fails, you simply launch another one. That's how we do it. There is no process that will guarantee us 100% success rate, but we can do everything we can to maximize our chances. So as you can see, it is important to plug them into our system rather than trying to find someone who will fix all of our problems. It's important to remember these 4 lessons. Step aside once you hand over the process. Do not micromanage. They cannot trust themselves if you don't trust them. They are not encouraged to fix issues if they know that you will always step in. They are not as careful if they know that you will review everything they do. And most importantly, teach them to do what they think is right, not what they think you want them to do. Well, and that's pretty much it. So let me know in the comments below what you would like to see next. And if you have any questions, make sure to join our Facebook community linked below. See you next week.